The safety net is being shredded right now, and I have a calling to do something about that.
And a CBS News California investigation taking a deep dive into the state's insurer of last resort. Why a fix to the fare plan might be far away.
What they put me through, they almost made me feel like I was going crazy.
Well, thanks for joining us this Friday. Let's take a look at our weekend weather forecast. Meteorologist Zoe Mintz tracking another warm-up.
We're looking at a beautiful day all across the Bay Area, although you do notice a lot more cloud coverage as there's a storm system that's passing well off to our north, and the southernmost edge of that storm system is moving over the Bay Area today. However, it's not going to bring us really any sort of moisture, although it looks like it wants to. The southern edge of that system is moisture starved, and we are not going to see any sort of precipitation potential for at least the next 7 days or so. So keep that in mind. These dry and above average temperatures are going to stick around. Today is not going to be nearly as warm as what we felt on Wednesday with the 80s, but still mid to upper 70s across our inland communities and mid to upper 60s for areas around the bay. That's still at least a couple of degrees above average, if not significantly more. These winds are going to stay relatively calm as well, definitely gustier closer to our coastal communities like Half Moon Bay, and even here in San Francisco might be gusting up to 25 miles an hour. But overall, we are expecting these calm, quiet, warm conditions to stick around. That does mean our pollen count is going to remain overall high throughout the next several days, so do not forget to grab that allergy medication. You're likely going to need it, because if we do take a look at our 7-day forecast, there is very little, if not any, sort of potential of rain over at least the next 7, if not closer to 14 days of weather ahead of us. Very dry and quiet patterns sticking around, again keeping those temperatures well above average throughout the rest of the weekend and into early next week. I hope you all can get out and enjoy these above average conditions while they last. Although it will be a bit cooler by early to mid next week, it's still going to remain above average and dry again for the foreseeable future.
Thanks, Zoe. Bay Area groups that preserve history and culture, latest to fall victim to the federal budget cuts. The National Endowment for the Humanities has been taking back millions of dollars in grants that were already awarded across the country. That includes $14 million to 33 groups right here in the Bay Area. Among them, the foundation that takes care of the Angel Island Immigration Station. That is where thousands of people entering the U.S. were once detained and interrogated. Now the station serves as a public reminder of the past. Our Max Darrow spoke with the foundation's director, who says the goal of preserving history is at odds with President Trump's agenda.
On a beautiful day for a voyage to his office for the day,
it's Angel Island, right over there, the largest island in the bay.
Ed Tephorn, the executive director of the Angel Island Immigration Station Foundation, can't help but feel a little bit deflated.
Opening that email, my stomach just dropped.
Like so many organizations, he just found out the National Endowment for the Humanities, the NEH, decided to terminate a $25,000 federal grant it previously awarded his organization. The letter states the NEH is repurposing its funding allocations in a new direction in furtherance of the president's agenda, and your grant's immediate termination is necessary to safeguard the interests of the federal government, including its fiscal priorities.
It felt like a punch in the gut reading the letter, seeing the words that our work no longer aligned with the priorities of the federal government, when our work really is just about lifting up important parts of U.S. and American history that are sometimes overlooked.
Tephorn and California State Park staff like Casey Dexter Lee are stewards of American history at the Angel Island Immigration Station, which was used as a detention center in the early 1900s. Approximately 500,000 immigrants from 80 countries were processed, detained, and/or interrogated here.
This place was built to enforce the Chinese exclusion laws that were in effect at the time, and so that was its original purpose.
Without this funding, it definitely hampers our opportunities and our abilities to be able to tell these often invisible stories.
Carved into the walls inside, poems giving a glimpse of what life was like for the detainees.
This work is important to ensuring the full American story. And while it may be difficult to hear, while it might be uncomfortable for people to hear, there's so many lessons that we can learn from the stories of what immigrants experienced under detention here. There's so many stories that we can learn about what these immigrants and their descendants have gone on to do to contribute to the U.S. and to the world.
The NEH is terminating previously approved federal grants for organizations from coast to coast. That includes 33 in the Bay Area, totaling over $14 million.
DOGE, I don't think, even knows what it's cutting.
Steve Kidd is the executive director of the National Humanities Alliance. He says the NEH is one of the most important sources of funding for humanities organizations, as it funds a lot of orgs that private donors don't.
It is less biased toward elite institutions than a lot of private funders.
He says this decision to cut grants will have long-term impacts on communities across America.
The NEH has had bipartisan support for years. Members of Congress know the importance of this work in their districts across the country.
Tepborn says he expects another federal grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services will soon be terminated too. The two grants totaling around $100,000.
We're still thinking about what possibilities and exploring options for how we might be able to get these federal grants restored.
But he says these decisions from Washington won't stop his mission from making history known that he says can't be washed away.
So he tells Max that grant was going to help pay for upgrades to the exhibit. We requested an interview with the NEH to try to find out more about what went into the decision to terminate these grants and have not heard back. China announcing overnight it's going to raise tariffs on U.S. goods from 84% to 125% starting tomorrow. President Trump holding firm on keeping a tariff on Chinese goods at 145%. The president signaling to China's president to call him to try to make a deal, but so far, no call. So how are negotiations going with other countries currently on a 90-day pause from the tariffs? We heard from CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang.
Well, we know that the U.S. and Vietnam have agreed to start formal discussions after both the Treasury Secretary and the U.S. Trade Representative had meetings with the leader there. And we also know that the administration sources tell us that there are at least 15 deals that they are very strongly looking at, that they say are almost done, but they have to see if it's good enough to present to President Trump.
This all comes as President Trump gets his annual physical this morning at Walter Reed Medical Center in Maryland. Apple users here in the U.S. rushing to upgrade their phones in light of the tariff turn-up. An iPhone that a lot of people use is likely among most that are manufactured right now in China. Experts say President Trump's tariffs could nearly double the cost of an iPhone.
I've been listening to the news, and they're talking about prices going up, and I figured I'd get in before the prices went up.
The Trump administration says the goal is to get companies like Apple to move production to the U.S. Instead, Apple has ramped up its manufacturing in India, excuse me, to work around the proposed tariffs. You can track how the Trump tariffs are affecting prices on groceries, cars, and more using our online tool. Just head to our website, cbsnews.com/tariffs. Following reports that Oakland Unified voted to remove Superintendent Kyla Johnson-Trammell from her position by the end of the school year, the board president is now calling that misinformation. It remains unclear exactly what happened behind closed doors on Wednesday night, but board member Mike Hutchinson posted on Facebook that the board privately and unofficially voted to remove the superintendent. But then yesterday, the board president pushed back on the reported removal, calling that post misinformation.
We did not vote on that item. And this is why you have reportable actions that the board agrees on that are made public. And it's why you have, the statements that are made by the board, not by individuals.
Well, Trammell Johnson has led OUSD since 2017 through some tough times. And all this back and forth is leaving parents looking for some concrete answers, uncertain about the priorities of the district.
I feel like parents had finally had some faith in OUSD, and I just don't know that that's going to continue if we have some, interim superintendent.
Meantime, the district is facing a nearly $100 million budget deficit for the next school year, meaning if officials don't make significant cuts soon, they could be out of money by November, which could trigger increased state oversight. The race for mayor in Oakland coming down to the final stretch with that special election coming this next Tuesday. Former Congresswoman Barbara Lee and former City Councilman Lauren Taylor are the two frontrunners, according to public financial disclosures tracking how much money they've raised. All candidates are going to have a busy weekend as early voting sites in Oakland are open from 9 to 5 each day. They're running to replace Sheng Tao, who was recalled, of course, by voters in November. Still ahead here on CBS News Bay Area, we are introducing you to the local food bank leader who put her own retirement on hold to make sure that there's help available to her most vulnerable neighbors.
I didn't have a cruise booked or anything like that. This is my life's work, one way or the other.
Plus, pro-Palestinian protesters at Stanford charged with felonies. We'll hear from activists who say the charges send a chilling message.
They must now ask themselves, how violent will law enforcement be with us if we choose to protest?
And Waymo's driverless cars soon be allowed to drive on the stretch of Market Street in San Francisco that is right now closed to normal cars. We're hearing from a critic who says this is a dangerous move.
In the Bay Area, a new WNBA franchise is taking flight. Catch this first-in-a-lifetime inaugural season as the Golden State Valkyries play live on KPIX and Pix Plus.
Happy Friday. Oh my goodness, what an absolutely gorgeous 7-day forecast ahead of us. It is going to be some lovely April weather, well above average today, tomorrow, but by Sunday, that's when the real heat up will arrive with 80s returning to our inland communities. It's going to be absolutely gorgeous out there. But again, mid to upper 70s likely sticking around for at least the next 7 days for our inland communities. And even areas around the Bay are going to stay well above average in the 70s and upper 60s. Get out and enjoy it.
Well, the Trump administration's federal cuts have taken a toll on food banks across the country. Just last month, the USDA canceled $420 million in funding that helped programs buy food directly from local farms. Sunnyvale Community Services is just one of the organizations impacted by these cuts. And the woman who's been running it over the last 15 years says she is walking away from her retirement plans to help the organization through hard times. Len Ramirez has her story.
Well, the long lines for food distribution here at Sunnyvale Community Service is one indication of the dire need that remains in this community. In fact, some people say it's only getting worse, and that's a big reason why the executive director of this organization has postponed her retirement.
Whoops.
After 71 years and 2 successful careers in tech and nonprofits, Marie Bernard was planning to finally step down and retire in 2025. But with the tanking economy, cuts to social services, and food insecurity on the rise, Marie says now is no time for her to coast off into the sunset.
I didn't have a cruise booked or anything like that. This is my life's work one way or the other.
So she canceled her retirement to help her organization serve their clients at a time of need.
In my heart, I felt this was the thing to do now. And given all the changes that are happening, the safety net is being shredded right now. And I have a calling to do something about that. And this seems like it's the best place for me to be right now.
Marie has led Sunnyvale Community Service for 15 years. It provides a range of services, including health screening, job and school readiness, emergency financial aid, and of course, food and nutrition. On this day alone, the organization and an army of volunteers gave out more than 1,400 bags of food.
We do like to give them some protein. This week it's frozen turkey.
Ariana Quintero's family was once a food bank recipient. Now she works here serving others.
It helped us through very tight moments.
But looming federal cuts could shift billions in food assistance costs to California and other states, potentially jeopardizing what food banks can provide. And widespread layoffs in the federal departments are being felt right here.
It was already hard to navigate the systems. They weren't always perfect. In fact, we knew they were very imperfect. Now they're not there. And so we've gone from imperfect to nothing for a lot of our clients. And there's also a lot of fear. The chaos is, I think, really going to perpetrate a lot of people falling through the cracks.
It all added into Marie's decision to stay on and use her decades of experience to guide the agency through turbulent times. But one thing she knows for sure, her work is making a difference for people like Martha Mejia. Do you need the help right now?
Yes,
why?
Because it's very lot price. There's no more money. This is for help for family. Thank you. For my son, for my child, thank you so much.
Being involved in the community is something that I will cherish and do as long as I can.
And so Marie plans to stay on while still working with her organization to plan for the day when she will step down. Unfortunately for her own retirement plans, she doesn't think that day will come anytime soon.
Sunnyvale Community Services doesn't stop at food distribution. It also gives out financial aid and offers job and school readiness support. A dozen pro-Palestinian protesters are facing felony charges nearly a year after breaking into the president's office at Stanford and barricading themselves inside. The demonstrators were calling on the university to divest from ventures that support the Israeli military. But Santa Clara County's district attorney said it is how they carried out their protests that crossed a line.
I will not allow people hiding behind masks to commit crimes.
Our Kara St. Cyr has reaction to the most serious charges yet tied to the campus demonstrations over the war in Gaza.
safety vehicle and graffiti on Main Quad was very startling.
Alex Ellison remembers the day 12 pro-Palestinian protesters barricaded themselves in the Stanford University president's office last June. While she understands the decision behind today's charges, she wonders what it'll mean for the future of demonstrations on campus.
In an ideal world, I think students should be able to protest against things that they believe to be unjust without having to fear the school or local law enforcement coming after them.
Dissent is American. Vandalism is criminal.
Santa Clara County DA Jeff Rosen charged all 12 people, including 8 current Stanford students, with felony charges of vandalism and conspiracy to trespass. Rosen said the defendants broke into University President Richard Saller's office at 5:30 a.m. using hammers and crowbars. The group then formed a barricade with office furniture before spraying the room with fake blood. They occupied the office for almost 3 hours, trashing furniture and ultimately causing $700,000 worth of damage. Rosen says they even brought a manual on how to occupy the building.
They had operational plans, they had lookouts, they were scouting out the area to see what time either uniformed police officers or private security would be around.
The protesters, aged 19 to 32, now face up to 3 years in prison. 4 have already surrendered to the DA's office.
The rule of law includes all of our colleges and universities, because these institutions are not accountability-free zones and are not above or beyond the reach of the California Penal Code.
Zahara Billu, the executive director of the Council on American Islamic Relations in San Francisco, condemned the charges.
This could have and should have been handled through the university disciplinary process. Why are we wasting resources?
The Trump administration has recently revoked visas from hundreds of international students on campuses across the country, including Stanford. While it hasn't given an official reason for most cases, free speech advocates fear it's part of the effort to crack down on pro-Palestinian activism. Rosen says all of the students charged with vandalism are U.S. citizens. But Billu says this sends a frightening message to pro-Palestinian students.
They must now ask themselves, how violent will law enforcement be with us if we choose to protest? And what will be the lifelong consequences, again, of peaceful protest, a long celebrated tradition?
Although the protesters do face jail time, the DA says he doesn't want that to be the outcome here. He is hoping for community service instead. We reached out to Stanford. A spokesperson told us that the university respects the DA's decision. We also asked how the school is disciplining the students involved. University says these students were suspended for 2 quarters. Graduations were delayed, and they had to do community service. Still ahead, the city of San Francisco opening up Market Street to driverless cars. But not everyone agrees with the decision. We're hearing from safety advocates who say this is the wrong way to try to breathe life into downtown.
This, we think, sends things in the complete wrong direction.
In the coming days, Waymo's self-driving robo-taxis are going to make their way onto Market Street in San Francisco. It is a big change designed to bring some life back to downtown. It's a roughly 2-mile stretch that has been closed to traffic, most traffic since 2020, and that runs from Main Street near the Embarcadero all the way to 10th Street. The closure was championed by safety advocates, but not everyone is on board. Kelsey Thorne has more on the debate.
Currently, this section of Market Street is only open to Muni buses, trains, and taxis. But Mayor Daniel Lurie announced that he's going to allow Waymo autonomous vehicles to start driving on this section of Market Street. Not everybody, though, is excited about that. We spoke with cyclists, pedestrians, and public transit riders who have a problem with it.
Because people bike here all the time, whether they're going to Valencia Street.
Christopher White is the executive director of the San Francisco Bike Coalition. He says he wasn't too happy when he heard Mayor Daniel Lurie's announcement that Waymo will soon be allowed to drive on the portion of Market Street closed off to cars.
But this, we think, sends things in the complete wrong direction.
Christopher, along with representatives from Walk SF, Kids Safe SF, and SF Transit riders, worry allowing Waymo onto Market Street will just add to safety concerns.
Market Street, before it was car-free, was also the most dangerous street in San Francisco. And since cars were taken off of it, injury crashes have dropped by 40%, which is huge.
Christopher also told us he's worried the autonomous vehicles could create roadblocks and traffic jams for folks riding Muni buses and trains.
No, it's obvious from our experience here in San Francisco that it's very easy for Waymos to brick, and when they do, it's just going to create confusion, unsafe conditions. We don't know how it would affect emergency response. We're concerned about that as well. We just think that this is a bad idea all around.
In his announcement, Mayor Lurie said Waymo would complement the existing transportation options on Market and help bring more people into the area, supporting local businesses and helping to revitalize the city's downtown. Carlos Hernandez is the co-founder of Coffee Bodega Off Market. He told us he's all for having Waymo on the street.
Bringing Waymo down to Market will bring more foot traffic onto the Market Street, especially in the downtown area, where we've been struggling a lot to see people return to work. And this could promote people to come back to work.
Christopher, though, is skeptical. He doesn't believe more cars will mean more people. He says the city should focus on making Market Street a can't-miss destination. That's what he believes will really bring people back.
Having festivals, having night markets. I think that creating entertainment zones, which the mayor recently did, is a great idea. Giving people reasons to go to Market Street is the thing that's going to bring Market Street back to life. It's not cars.
Now, despite the pushback from people like Christopher, the mayor says that Waymo employees will be allowed to map this section of Market Street in the coming days. They expect to be able to get passengers into cars being able to be picked up and dropped off from Market Street by this summer.
Bay Area labor leaders are going to be honored at the Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta Holiday Parade and Festival. It's going on in San Francisco tomorrow. The parade beginning at Dolores Park and ending at 24th and Folsom. That is also where a festival is going to take place. We're talking music, lowrider cars, Aztec dancers, and labor unions in attendance. One of the organizers tells us it is an important time to show support.
He lived by the values of nonviolence, public action, and volunteerism. And that we need that today, and to remind people that sí se puede, but you can do it nonviolently.
Here are the details of the celebration tomorrow. It's all kicking off at 11 a.m. A sign of spring in San Francisco. Tomorrow marks the start of the Cherry Blossom Festival in Japantown. A lot going on this weekend. The festival coincides with the blooming of the sakura in Japan. It is a celebration of spring and Japanese culture featuring arts and crafts, music, and live performances. And of course, plenty of food. The 57th annual Cherry Blossom Festival stretches over 2 weekends and then wraps up with a grand parade coming up next Sunday. Coming up in the next half hour here on CBS News Bay Area, following a quick response to put out a fire in Oakland yesterday, first responders reflect on how they might not be as lucky next time as the city faces major budget issues.
Without the air support, we would have had a much harder time getting into where this fire is.
Plus, our ongoing investigation into California's insurance crisis, why the plan that millions of people depend on needs a major fix.
I expected them, my insurance company, to restore my home to what it had been before the fire. And
I'm Ann Makovic, and this is The Minute. Another roller coaster on Wall Street this morning as the trade war with China escalates. The markets are up right now after opening slightly lower. That all comes after China announced it is raising tariffs on U.S. goods to 125%. The U.S. imposed a 145% tariff on China. 6 people, including 3 children, are dead after a sightseeing helicopter crashed into the Hudson River, broke apart midair yesterday, killing the pilot and a family of tourists from Spain. The FAA and NTSB are investigating. And Nokia is expanding in San Jose. The electronics company is building a new semiconductor facility on San Ignacio Avenue. The company says this brings hundreds of manufacturing and construction jobs. It is being paid for in part through federal funding. I'm Ann Makovic with The Minute.
You're streaming CBS News Bay Area.
We're looking at a beautiful day all across the Bay Area, although you do notice a lot more cloud coverage as there's a storm system that's passing well off to our north, and the southernmost edge of that storm system is moving over the Bay Area today. However, it's not going to bring us really any sort of moisture, although it looks like it wants to. The southern edge of that system is moisture starved, and we are not going to see any sort of precipitation potential for at least the next 7 days or so. So keep that in mind. These dry and above average temperatures are going to stick around. Today is not going to be nearly as warm as what we felt on Wednesday with the 80s, but still mid to upper 70s across our inland communities and mid to upper 60s for areas around the bay. That's still at least a couple of degrees above average, if not significantly more. These winds are going to stay relatively calm as well, definitely gustier closer to our coastal communities like Half Moon Bay, and even here in San Francisco might be gusting up to 25 miles an hour. But overall, we are expecting these calm, quiet, warm conditions to stick around. That does mean our pollen count is going to remain overall high throughout the next several days, so do not forget to grab that allergy medication. You're likely going to need it, because if we do take a look at our 7-day forecast, there is very little, if not any, sort of potential of rain over at least the next 7, if not closer to 14 days of weather ahead of us. Very dry and quiet patterns sticking around, again keeping those temperatures well above average throughout the rest of the weekend and and into early next week. I hope you all can get out and enjoy these above average conditions while they last. Although it will be a bit cooler by early to mid next week, it's still going to remain above average and dry again for the foreseeable future.
After firefighters quickly knocked out a fire in the Oakland Hills yesterday, there is renewed attention on the area's ability to make sure fires like that don't get out of control. As Andrea Nakano reports, even small fires make people in fire-prone areas anxious these days, especially given the city's budget crisis.
Even a small fire in the Oakland Hills is enough to bring up bad memories for many in the community, especially given the city's looming budget crisis, which at one point shuttered some stations.
It's very concerning.
Nearly 4 dozen firefighters responded to this fire Thursday, but tell us that with any fire, regardless of location, teamwork is key.
What really made the difference on this fire was having CAL FIRE's air support as well as East Bay Regional Park's air support for this incident. Again, without the air support, we would have had a much harder time getting into where this fire is.
People in the community quickly got the alert about the fire in their backyard. Even though this one was small, firefighters say a shift in the wind could have pushed it closer to homes.
It's a pretty challenging fire. Given time of day and the time of year, we got lucky on this one. Had the same fire occurred in August or September, we would be dealing with a whole different animal right here.
The summer months are what many in this neighborhood worry about. That's when the reality of the city's budget woes really start to come to mind.
It's worrisome. I mean, this should be the last area, city, neighborhood where that would even be an option. That shouldn't even be on the table.
Dave Geiser has lived in the area for 36 years, and Nita Ahmed moved into her home almost 20 years ago. With their home surrounded by open space, fire danger is a big concern, especially after fire in the Oakland Hills last October.
It was pretty scary. I'd say that was the scariest fire incident that I've experienced here. Yeah.
Both have done the basics. They create a defensible space and have a plan if a fire comes dangerously close to their homes. They say the next step is to vote next week for a leader that plans on properly funding the fire department.
I would hope the new mayor is going to put something together that's going to make it happen.
Following 3 days of hearings, a judge in Oakland is weighing a decision that could drive home insurance costs through the roof for millions of Californians. State Farm asking the state to approve a 17% rate hike increase to shore up its finances after the devastating LA wildfires. The request comes as the state is trying to find ways to make insurance more available and get people off the FAIR plan. In our ongoing investigation into the state's insurance market, CBS News California investigative reporter Julie Watts has been walking us through how that plan that is supposed to help people who cannot get insurance actually impacts all of us. And now she's taken a look at why it has taken so long for lawmakers to take action and if we're any closer to a fix.
I can still just melt hearing the sound of the creek and breathing in this redwood air.
It was a fixer-upper in the Santa Cruz Mountains that Sarah transformed into her dream home.
It's so special.
But her dream of being a first-time homeowner,
it's also
turned into a nightmare after the CZU Lightning Complex fire in 2020.
Pretty traumatic.
Not because the fire destroyed the homes around her.
What they put me through.
Because of how she says the FAIR plan treated her.
They almost made me feel like I was going crazy.
Like many whose homes survive a wildfire, Sarah's was filled with ash and soot and potentially toxic remnants of all that burned around her.
I think a lot of people assume it kind of smells like a campfire. It smelled rancid. It almost was kind of sour.
But according to court records, the FAIR plan refused to pay to remove the toxic materials so she could safely move back in.
One of the adjusters on my claim, Chad, told me to Swiffer.
Sarah's story is all too common. 4 years ago, the Department of Insurance told the FAIR plan its denial of smoke damage claims like Sarah's was illegal. The FAIR plan disagreed.
Your response was completely inappropriate and dehumanizing, and it felt awful.
2 years ago, Sarah testified at this FAIR plan Department of Insurance hearing.
And none of you will look at me, and that is awful.
And little has changed.
But I haven't received a penny.
The FAIR Plan is still using the same language to deny smoke damage claims for LA fire victims.
All of the attic insulation has to be removed.
Like Helen.
It's a canary in the coal mine.
From the insurance industry spokesman to the former insurance commissioner.
Insurance is basically the canary in the coal mine.
Everyone we've interviewed acknowledges that FAIR Plan problems are a symptom of California's worsening insurance crisis.
The reason all of us should care is that we're now on the hook, all of us, in case the FAIR Plan runs out of money.
Which it did, which it has.
That's right.
The FAIR Plan has more than doubled in size as major insurers stopped writing new policies in California.
It was shocking that they said they wouldn't insure this house.
And now anyone can be forced into the FAIR Plan. As our CBS News California data analysis recently revealed, most homes on the FAIR Plan are in the lowest risk zip codes according to the insurer's fire risk classification, like Ken and Lisa.
Everybody's at risk. You don't get comfortable with your insurance company right now. They can drop you like that.
I was non-renewed and it happened to me.
State Senator Susan Rubio has been chair of the Senate Insurance Committee longer than most state lawmakers have been in office.
In the last 7 years that I've been chair, we were not having the types of discussions we're having now. The appetite wasn't quite there.
She says the LA fires changed that.
Now everyone wants to talk about it. They want to come to the table, and I think it's a good thing.
Lawmakers introduced nearly a dozen bills that directly reference the FAIR Plan in just the first 3 months of the year, double the number introduced in the entire last 2-year session.
Now, none of the bills that you're sponsoring thus far directly address that transparency issue.
Because we're working on our audit right now.
The insurance commissioner, who's sponsoring several bills, acknowledged some of the shortcomings we've uncovered.
Hopefully it can help guide us in terms of some of the things that we need to refine, but this is just the beginning.
Like Laura, Rubio believes the key to fixing the FAIR Plan is to get people off of it.
How do we depopulate the FAIR Plan?
Which requires incentivizing insurers to write new policies, most likely by allowing them to charge more.
We don't have a perfect solution at this point. We don't. But we do have a lot of great ideas that I think that could eventually turn into good policy.
But eventually is a long time to wait for people like Ken and Lisa, and for Helen and Sarah, who spent 4 years fighting the FAIR Plan.
I expected them, my insurance company, to restore my home to what it had been before the fire. And they refused.
She ultimately paid out of pocket to basically gut her house and make it livable, but she couldn't bear to move back in.
So this process was so traumatic for you that you don't want to be a homeowner anymore.
Especially not in the state of California.
So the FAIR Plan eventually settled with Sarah. There was no legal precedent in her case, but her attorney just filed 10 first-of-their-kind FAIR Plan smoke damage lawsuits on behalf of LA fire victims. They are suing not just the FAIR Plan, but also the private insurance companies like State Farm, Allstate, and Nationwide that run the FAIR Plan. Coming up next, building a better, more environmentally friendly seawall in San Francisco. We're taking a deep dive into the plan to protect the Bay's native species.
In the Bay Area, a new WNBA franchise is taking flight. Catch this first-in-a-lifetime inaugural season as the Golden State Valkyries play live on KPIX and Pix Plus.
Happy Friday. Oh my goodness, what an absolutely gorgeous 7-day forecast ahead of us. It is going to be some lovely April weather, well above average today, tomorrow, but by Sunday, that's when the real heat up will arrive with 80s returning to our inland communities. It's going to be absolutely gorgeous out there. But again, mid to upper 70s likely sticking around for at least the next 7 days for our inland communities. And even areas around the bay are going to stay well above average in the 70s and upper 60s. Get out and enjoy it.
On today's Project Earth, San Francisco's famed waterfront is facing some real threats, from sea level rise to extreme weather and seismic danger, of course. The Seawall, built more than a century ago, runs from Fisherman's Wharf to the Giants Ballpark. It's supposed to protect downtown, but inspections show that it needs repairs. There's now talk of literally bringing this aging seawall to life. The San Francisco Embarcadero is full of eye-catching destinations, from the ferry building to Fisherman's Wharf. But these days, down by the water, what's grabbing a lot of attention is what you don't see.
I got out of the water after my first dive and I felt like saying, hey, you people walking around on the sidewalk, do you know what's going on down there?
Along the aging seawall at 3 different locations, scientists have placed some very unusual tiles. A few times a year at low tide, the team climbs over the wall to inspect them. Some are brought back to street level for a closer look.
What you're seeing is some amazingly luxurious growth of native seaweeds.
The once empty tiles are now covered in marine life.
This is our native Olympia oyster, doing quite well. Here's a sea spider, a pycnogonid. Animal here with the spots is a sea slug.
What makes these tiles so different, while some are smooth, others are constructed with bumps and grooves.
It has portions that stick out, it has indentations.
The cutting-edge experiment is known as the Living Seawall Project, launched in 2022 by the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center with the Port of San Francisco.
See how lacy that is?
The goal is to see whether the textured tiles can better replicate a natural habitat for native species.
Traditionally, when we think of seawalls, they're these flat, smooth, vertical surfaces, and there's been this new wave of thinking on how we can retrofit them or enhance them to benefit biodiversity.
At the Smithsonian's lab in Tiburon, Dr. Chayla Zabin and grad student Corinne Knapp take an even deeper dive. Zabin peers through a microscope to get a much closer look at what's living on the tiles.
We can see a lot of things that are very tiny that we wouldn't see in the field, even under the best of conditions.
Knapp is running tests on how the new communities function.
We want to figure out, not just who is there, but what they're doing.
If the textured tiles prove beneficial, they could be built into a new, more resilient seawall that's already in the works.
So we want to do something that tips the balance in favor of native species.
Protecting life above and beneath the waves. For more Project Earth stories like that one, head to our website, kpix.com. United Airlines is now a founding partner and the official airline of the Golden State Valkyries, the new WNBA team. The new multi-year partnership is focusing on elevating women's sports and investing in communities. The Valkyries' inaugural season tipping off in May, and CBS News Bay Area is the official home of the Valkyries' inaugural season. More than 30 games are going to air on KPIX and on Pix Plus. Coming up, Mount Tamalpais is known as the birthplace of mountain biking. Now, how one rider is trying to carve out trails across the Bay Area.
Treasure flying heading 340, join the Gorman 8 departure, 5-8.
Well, you might not know it, but Marin County is actually believed to be the birthplace of mountain biking. Now, there's a growing push to reclaim streets and trails across the Bay Area. But as Itai Hodge shows us, one local rider discovers not everybody is on board.
For 26-year-old Teddy Hayden, gravity isn't a law. It's more of a suggestion.
I definitely get scared sometimes. Sometimes I will sort of drag myself across a feature that I have to commit to the bottom, and maybe that decision was questionable.
Hayden is a San Francisco-based mountain biker and content creator whose viral videos drop viewers right onto his bike, making them feel every descent and heart-stopping turn. But he's not riding some remote trail. He's turning San Francisco's streets and parks into his own course.
I've seen some of the most incredible things in my life on a bicycle. It's just a great way to experience the world.
He's not alone. Mountain biking is shifting into high gear. The pandemic gave it a push, creating an unstoppable momentum that's still gaining speed.
Mountain biking makes you feel very free and kind of connected to the world, but through the medium of this strange machine that we have.
His bike seems to float, pulling off stunts that look more like choreography than cycling, especially when he's jumping over you, or in this case, me. How dangerous is this?
It's dangerous in the sense that you'll probably fall and maybe break a wrist or sprain an ankle or something.
But danger isn't the only challenge. In the very place where mountain biking was born, the sport is now facing pushback. Despite its rugged beauty, the city's transportation code prohibits riding bikes on city streets. And many of its best trails come with a no trespassing sign for riders. Hayden is working to change that. But in the meantime,
sometimes you get in trouble. Sometimes if a park ranger catches you on a trail, they give you a ticket.
Let the bike do all the work.
Rachel Lloyd, a mountain bike coach and former racer, says the secret is to not overthink it.
Just let go.
Easier said than done. Gravity may be just a suggestion for Teddy Hayden. I'm good. But for the rest of us, it's very much a rule.
Yikes. Hayden tells Itai that he is planning on competing at the annual Marin Duro race coming up next Saturday. Well, the countdown is on to Gayle King's historic flight to space coming up on Monday. She talked to Vladimir Duthiers about the crucial support she's getting from her 2 kids and her best friend, Oprah Winfrey.
If any of the 3 of them had said, I don't think it's a good idea or I'm worried, I wouldn't have done it. But they were all so excited and enthusiastic for me.
If they were afforded the opportunity, if Will or Kirby or Oprah...
I refuse to answer that question.
Why, Gayle?
No.
What would you say to them?
And of course, tune in Monday on KPIX. We'll have special live coverage of Gayle's historic flight starting at 6 a.m. Happy trails. Thanks for streaming CBS News Bay Area. I'm Ann Makovic. We're going to be right back with your First Alert forecast and another look at your top stories.